Okay, on behalf of California American Water, the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District, and the Water Awareness Committee, we're very happy to have you folks join us this evening. And so, we have we have a lot of people tonight. That's wonderful. And so, tonight we're going to learn about what is the class about tonight? I'm sorry.
Tonight's permeable surfaces.
That's right. Okay. And so, also Veronica, real quick, is going to talk about what's going on Saturday, October 11th. Would you like to go ahead, Veronica?
Yes, thank you, Joe. Good evening, everyone. I'm Veronica Aguilera. I'm a water conservation specialist from California American Water. And as Joe mentioned, October 11th, we are happy to have our big mulch event in Marina at the landfill. If you are a CalAm customer, please contact us for any information. Otherwise, this event is scheduled to be October 11th, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And the free mulch giveaway will be 5 mulch bags or up to 2 cubic yards.
Wow, that's a lot of mulch.
Yeah, and 2 cubic yards is like it's a truck full, okay? A large truck full.
Yep.
So either 5 large bags, and we have people out there that are going to, if you get the 5 large bags, they'll put it in your vehicle. And then we have someone with the tractor that will fill your vehicle with mulch. And it's free for CalAm and Monterey Peninsula Water Management District customers who are also in their service area. Okay.
Yes,
Right.
I will put our local office number on in the chat group for any questions. Please feel free to reach out to us.
Let me make you hosts actually before I forget. So that you can also, so you can do that. And then also so that you can answer questions. So if people have questions during the presentation that you can go ahead and just answer.
Okay.
So welcome everyone to tonight's topic, which is about permeability everywhere. So thank you, California American Water. Joe, did you want to say anything about the other partners in tonight's class?
Yes, and so tonight with our class, our sponsors are California American Water and the Water District and the Water Awareness Committee. So that's basically who the sponsors are this evening. Oh, and I see we have some people that I recognize. I see Edie Lemon is joining us tonight. Edie used to work for CalAm and now she's retired.
All
And
right.
so we're happy to have Edie with us. And we also, I see Don Prescott is with us and Caitlin and a few people that I recognize. And I'm glad that you're on tonight. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, we are glad to have you, and hopefully you will learn something. That's certainly our intention. Now, what will help you on your way is you'll be getting an email tomorrow with some links and resources, including this guidebook, which will talk about the watershed approach. I'll talk a little bit about it in class, but gives you a lot of information about, taking out grass, about capturing rain, about lots of different topics to making your garden as climate ready and resilient as possible. So here are the 6 different honeycombs that we are going to be talking about as we explore this conversation about permeability. So the first one is, why does it matter? Why do we care about permeability? The second one is we'll be talking about different materials over the course of the evening. The first one is gravel and DG. So those are the easiest, least expensive. Then number 3 is we'll be talking about working with pavers, a little bit more challenging, more expensive. You can see how we're headed as we make our way around. Walkable ground covers. So for people that want to accomplish permeability without using any hardscape, we'll talk about how you can do that. Then number 5 is actually talking about driveways, where we get a lot of runoff. And then number 6 is the importance of recognizing that the biggest opportunity for permeability, for getting water into the ground, is what we do with our soil. So that is the plan for tonight. Let's get going. So first off, why does it matter? So a couple of years ago, when we were having our big heavy rains, the state of California got some 73 trillion gallons of water. Unfortunately, what we held on to was about 10%. So the amount of rain, because people will sometimes say, oh, you live in California, you don't get any rain. It's like, well, yeah, we do get rain, and sometimes we get a lot of rain. Our problem is we're not very good at holding on to it. And part of the reason, and it depends obviously on where you live. If you live in a more rural area, there is more greenery, but certainly in the urban areas, it is a built environment. There is very little permeability, very little greenery, and so a lot of our water is running off. Even in homes where you look at it and you go, oh, there's a garden, we should have permeability there. The problem is a lot of those surfaces are actually not permeable. So yeah, obviously the driveway, the pathway, the street, we expect that to be non-permeable, but our turf, because it's compacted, our bare areas, because they are compacted, that water's not soaking in either. And our homes have been engineered so that when it rains, any of the water that hits the roof goes into a downspout, goes into out to the street to try to get it away from the property as quickly as possible. And then it makes its way through the streets and the alleys. It picks up all kinds of pollutants as it goes, some of which are visible and some of which are invisible. Makes its way through our flood control systems, and during some of those big rains, that water is overflowing that control system. So all of that stuff is getting into our streets as well. That's not a pretty thought, and ends up here in our waterways. And we look at this image and we go, oh my gosh, look at all of that trash, look at all of that garbage. But remembering that this is only the part that we can see, that there's all of those pollutants, that brake dust, that oil, those pesticides and herbicides, that's all here as well, plus what makes its way actually out into our waters. So we need to shift that paradigm. We need to change the way that we look at our landscapes, the way we look at our development. But right now we'll focus on our landscapes. And what we want to do is we want to shift from what we've just looked at, these impermeable surfaces where all that water is running off, to a natural watershed. So a watershed is defined as an area of land where all of the water that drains off of it or goes under it goes to the same place. So we look here, we've got that precipitation makes its way to the ground where it is slowed by the plants, by the roots. And then some of that water as it hits the ground is going to flow overland into our body of water. In this case, it's a river. Some of that water will make its way through the soil where it is cleaned by the roots of the plants and by the biology that lives in the soil. And then from there, some of that water will move through basically sideways into the river. And depending how much rain we actually get, some of it will go ahead and continue to percolate through. And that is how we replenish our water tables. And then the sun comes out, water goes back up into the sky through evaporation or evapotranspiration, and we start that process all over again. So what we want you to do is to look at your garden, front yard, your backyard, your side yard as a mini watershed. And what that does is it includes four key principles. The first one is the soil sponge. We'll be talking a lot about that at the end. Secondly is certainly having climate appropriate plants. So yes, natives are great, but it doesn't have to be exclusively natives. Holding on to rainwater, very, very important. And then when it comes to irrigation, making sure that if you have irrigation, it is as efficient as possible, and that you don't necessarily have to have it once your plants get established. So the healthier the soil is, the more adapted the plants are, the more rain we hold on to, the less irrigation we actually would need. And then here you go. This is that soil sponge. We keep calling it a sponge, and you can see why. There's like these little holes in there. And what it does is it holds on to the rain or irrigation when we get it, and then it slowly releases it to the plants as they need it. It's very happy soil. You can see there's that big juicy worm in there. And then there's also all of these roots, right? They're not all smushed up in the top inch, but they've got lots of room to spread out and grow and pull in nutrients. So tonight is really looking at how do we create permeability at every opportunity? And there are lots of opportunities. So it doesn't matter if it's path, a gathering area, or your driveway. We want to make sure that any water that falls on your landscape has the opportunity to make its way into the soil where it can benefit the plants. So there's lots and lots of different strategies. We're actually not going to be talking about rain gardens tonight. That is an entire class on its own. The idea that you contour the soil so that when it rains, we're able to keep it on the property. But rather, we're going to be focusing on what are the different materials beyond the rain garden that create that opportunity for permeability. So we're going to start with the easiest, the simplest, the least expensive, and that is working with gravel and decomposed granite, DG. So gravel is good in moderation. It is not intended to be mulch. It is not intended to fill up a front yard. It is intended to be used with discernment, with care, with planning and design. It is ideal for walkways and for patios. In this case, they actually have a beautiful combination of gravel and flagstone, and we'll be talking about flagstone in just a little bit. The thing about gravel is it's actually hard to walk on. So we recommend, I'm going to show you some options, but this is working with eco cells. So you can see that it is a solid made of plastic. You put it down and then basically you fill in the cells with gravel. And obviously you would fill it up high enough so that you don't see those little circles. But what it does is it gives you a stable setting to be able to walk on. And you can use this with gravel, and you can also use it with the decomposed granite. And having this in place actually allows for accessibility. So if you have someone in a wheelchair, or you need someone to be able to maneuver or walk across a space easily, definitely you would want to have this in place. Now, when you install it, there's different kinds of gravel. Not all gravels are created equally. And what you're looking at is what you're going to have is the base layer. So that will be compacted. We're going to talk about how you do that in just a minute as well. But it's not intended to be looked at. You can, certainly, maybe in a side yard, but it's not as attractive or as welcoming as the decorative layers. The decorative layer is more expensive. So the idea is that you put 2 to 2.5 inches at the bottom, the compacted base, the pea gravel, and then you put the decorative layer on top of that because that is what you see. Now, as far as installing it, and this may be a little bit more technical, but we thought it was important that as you make these decisions, some of you are going to do it yourself, absolutely. Or if you hire someone, it's nice to know what to expect or to look at what they're doing and going, why are you only putting down 2 inches? So showing you the proper way that things should be installed in order to have the most successful results. So with gravel, you're actually going to excavate 4 inches. So it's not just a little bit on top. We need to go down 4 inches. Again, we've got that 2.5 inches of base gravel and then the decorative gravel on top of that. Adding the moisture and tamping it helps you get a more solid surface, and that there's all of these little angles and edges, and by dampening it and by tamping it, you help those just interlock a little bit more, and that will give you a more stable surface. And then they actually recommend not going all the way to the top, otherwise you're going to start spilling over. So it just gives you a nice clean surface so that you've got the edge of the soil to help you. And then all of that extra soil, don't get rid of it. You can actually use it in the landscape to create interesting mounds. Now, another possibility is to mix pavers with the pebbles. So if you don't want to do those eco cells, this is a great idea. You can do flagstone pavers, you can do concrete pavers. One of the things about pavers that is challenging is the actual step. So how big a step do you need to take as you go from one paver to the next one? It's a little like playing hopscotch when you were little, but it gives you a solid surface to walk on when those pebbles again can feel a little bit unstable. Now here's decomposed granite. It is not intended to be mulch, not at all. Again, it is ideal for paths and for seating areas. Under plants, we want to be putting organic material. So here's a lovely example of that decomposed granite. You can see how it's held in place with what we call edging, and I'm going to show you some different examples of that, but it's just very clean and tidy. And then where the plants are, that's where we put true mulch, what they're giving away on October 11th. So you can put that under your plants instead. So decomposed granite is just that. It is granite that has broken down over time. It comes in different colors depending on where it is being mined. And even though we call it permeable, it is not as permeable as gravel. And sometimes if a contractor adds stabilizer, it actually does become as solid as concrete. So for me personally, it's not something I use a lot of. I would rather do the gravel, but if you want something that is slightly permeable, this is certainly an option for you. Now, installing the decomposed granite, again, you're looking at 4 inches. You're going to compact that subgrade. So the subgrade is basically the soil on which you are installing your hardscape, compacting it so that it's nice and solid. It's not moving, it's not loose. And then you will want to have a nice edge. So you can do it with wood, you can do it with steel, you can do it with something with Trex. So lots of materials that will create a nice solid edge for you. Now with decomposed granite, they actually recommend that you install it in lifts. So you don't put down 4 inches all at once because you really do want to be able to press it down, right? You've got these little particles. So what you do is you're going to put down your first you do your compaction on the subgrade. You lay down that first layer. You're actually going to moisten it a little bit. And then let it sit for 8 or 12 hours, and then you're going to roll it or tamp it. So again, we're just adding to that compaction. And then you repeat it again, and then potentially a third time. The other thing that we recommend when you're working with decomposed granite is adding a landing of sorts. So one of the complaints, if you will, about decomposed granite is it gets into the house, catches on your shoes. And so having a landing that is flagstone, that is brick, that is concrete, so that you can transition from this still relatively loose surface to one that is solid, and then you can just wipe off your shoes and go inside. So here are the different edgings. It's lovely with gravel. It's lovely with decomposed granite. It just gives you a nice clean border. If you're doing any sort of curves, it really just accentuates that. You can do it with steel, you can do it with wood composite. It's Trex, basically a plastic. Of the 3 is, well, the steel is pretty flexible as well, depending on the thickness. In this case, a concrete edging Probably not necessary in most residential settings, but depending on the size of your property, it might be something, or certainly if you're working near a driveway or something along those lines. And then here is an example of those two materials together. So you've got gravel where they've got the furniture, you've got decomposed granite where the path is, and then when you go out into the planting area, we've got the mulch. So you can see three different surfaces, all of which are permeable to a certain extent. The decomposed granite, again, being slightly less permeable than the other two. Moving on to working with pavers. So it's not as though the pavers themselves are permeable, it is the gaps in between the pavers that create that permeability. Lots of different materials. You can go crazy going to a stone yard. So we're going to be talking about brick, flagstone, and concrete. They all work with a similar principle. What's going to change is potentially the thickness of the different elements. So you will always start, obviously, with your native soil. You then have a compacted base, usually a pea gravel. They call it road base. You're looking at anywhere between 4 to 6 inches. Again, it is compacted, so it is stable for you. And then they put down a layer of builder's sand. So the sand gives you, especially with materials like flagstone, where the heights are not exactly the same, it gives you that wiggle room so that you can get a more precise lineup. And then you go ahead and you put down your pavers finally, and then you will always want some sort of edging. Sometimes the edging is that same material, brick, or again, it can be the wood, the steel, the concrete, what have you. Something that is going to give you a hard edge and not just up against the soil. And then in between the gravel and the builder's sand is a geotextile fabric. This is not weed fabric. The idea is that you've got a very fine material in the builder's sand and you don't want it to migrate into the gravel. So that's why that's there. And then here you can see, so it is coarser and less uniform than what you would consider playground sand or beach sand. And then once those pavers are placed, you're going to go ahead and fill the gaps with more sand so that things aren't moving. And there's this friction that happens that basically locks everything in place, but still allows for that permeability. Some of the things that you want to think about when you are creating or installing a hardscape is what happens to the water that lands on it. So yes, it will eventually make its way down through those gaps, but if you've got a lot of rains, potentially that water is going to be moving someplace, draining someplace. And what you want to do is make sure that it drains away from where you're going to be walking. So as we look at this pathway here, it is slightly sloped, so that that water will drain off to the sides and into the landscape. And then you can see that we've actually got additional gaps in between these like brick landings where they have filled it with gravel. So lots of opportunities for that water to get into the ground. Now, when it comes to brick patterns, you can go to town. Lots of patterns when it's all the same color. There's different kinds, colors of brick. There's old brick and new brick. So definitely you can get very, very creative. Recognizing, obviously, the more complex the pattern, the more time it will take. All right, next up is flagstone. So one summer, my husband and I installed a flagstone patio. We took all summer to install it. I wish I had known then what I know now when it comes to installing it properly. So when it comes to flagstone, I'm going to show you some different options. You can either lay it pretty loose, where it's almost like stepping stones, or you can fit it more tightly together so that it's a bit more like a puzzle. Recognizing that tighter the fit, the more precise you will have to be with your stone. And flagstone comes in all kinds of colors. It is so beautiful to work with. Comes from different parts of the country. It comes from different parts of the world. And the other thing to be aware of is that it comes in different thicknesses. So in order to have permeability, you will need to set your flagstone in sand as opposed to setting it on concrete. If you set it on concrete, they're putting down a slab, no permeability. But what it means is that if you are setting it on sand, you need that flagstone to be thicker. Otherwise, it will break or crack. So you can see you go from these beautiful warm colors that come from Arizona to the grays and blues, that beautiful bluestone that comes from back east. And again, we get flagstone from Africa, flagstone from Asia. Yeah, it's beautiful. More choices. When it comes to flagstone, you can have it in its natural form, or you can have it pre-cut. And it's sort of a one or the other when it comes to cost. So it is definitely easier to install flagstone when it is cut into nice straight lines, right? Much easier to get something that fits together. But the other side of the coin is that if you go with the less expensive stone, it will probably cost you more in labor to be able to get the fit and the precision of working with something that is more like the puzzle. So it's like a little bit of which way do you want to go, and also what is your aesthetic. Moving on to concrete. So concrete is an option that is potentially less expensive than flagstone and also gives you a lot of different choices and has a different look. So concrete can come precast, where basically, you can go to a stone yard, you can go to the large building stores, and you can get concrete in different colors, different patterns, and different sizes. So you can kind of mix and match if you want something that feels a little bit more irregular in its layout. Comes in different colors. Sometimes you can buy these palettes and it's actually their patterns. And each of the patterns is a slight different color so that it feels a little bit more natural, a little bit more like flagstone. That is what they are trying to create for you, something that feels a little bit more organic in nature. And then there are different textures, different finishes. Now, the other option, giving you lots of options. Hopefully you are not completely overwhelmed, but you can know what is possible for you, is poured in place, which means that you can go ahead and create the size, the dimensions, the shape of the concrete that you want. It is framed, and then they pour that concrete, let it dry, and then you remove those forms, making sure that you leave gaps for that permeability. And then concrete comes in all different colors, from grays to whites to blacks to oranges to golds. Really, you can just choose, you can go crazy trying to choose the color. And then not only do you have to pick the color, you have to pick the finish. And the reason that it's important to give it some sort of finish is that concrete unfinished can be slippery. So we want to just rough up the edges a little bit. Salt finish, they actually will put salt on top of the concrete, and then eventually the salt will break down. It starts out solid, but basically it dissolves, and then you're left with this texture. The exposed aggregate there is stone or aggregate, teeny tiny stones, pebbles, gravel in there. And that when you hose it down and you wash away sort of the finer layer, you are left with a rougher surface. And then broom finish, swirl finishes, those speak for themselves. Oh, I guess you're getting lots of questions. And then as far as patterns, you can actually also stamp it. So you can pour it in place, and then there are stamps that you can buy where you literally just create the pattern that you want. You can see one that looks like wood, like flagstone, like slate. The options are almost limitless. Now, in some cases, you already have concrete. I think there was someone who started out by saying, or maybe the patio had already been removed. But if you have a solid concrete, a path or a driveway, and you want to create permeability, you can actually cut the gaps into it. So 4 to 6 inches, cut out that concrete, and then fill it with permeable materials. And as far as materials, again, I don't want to say the sky's the limit, but you've got a lot of options. So certainly all different kinds of pebbles and gravels. This is where a lot of people have fun in that you can fill those gaps with plants. And look at how creative they have gotten that image on the right, where you've got the concrete pavers, and then in between they have planted, whether it's an Irish moss or oh goodness, I'm drawing a blank on what that plant is. But yeah, lots of different, Dimondia works, thyme works, but yeah, you can have lots of fun. And then super, super easy and inexpensive is just putting down the pavers and then filling in the gaps with mulch. And then you can just have all kinds of leeway when it comes to the plants. You don't need to worry about segregating hardscaping from planting area. All right, number 4, looking at walkable ground cover. So potentially you are taking out your turf or some of your turf, and you want this area to be walkable. So we say, well, how walkable? I hate to say it, but grass is probably the best thing when it comes to running around and playing on it. So if you have little ones and they want to be playing soccer, it is hard to find a replacement for turf. Although we're going to talk about how you can make your turf more resilient. But if it's just sort of a casual walk through an area, there are certainly other options that will accomplish that for you. And then one other thing you might want to consider is taking the lawn that you have and converting it into what we call a natural lawn or a polyculture lawn. And that means that we are now overseeding our grass with all kinds of other plants. So you can overseed it with clover, you can overseed it with natives, with wildflowers, with yarrow, lots of different options where you can add diversity to the grass. And as a result, create actually a soil that becomes more permeable as the health of that soil improves because we now have more plants in there. Here's that clover. It's a nitrogen fixer, so it is great at helping your grasses do better. These are gazanias. So they're like little daisies. They come in different colors. You can remove the grass, or you can go ahead and put it all in there and then just mow it as you need to. Here's Dimondia, which is super popular. Personally, I don't like using it in such large areas because it's too easy for it to get like not happy, and then you've got these gaps. So it is a great plant within like pavers or in smaller areas. It definitely likes a lot of sun, and it does not like too much water. So it's very drought tolerant. And then one that's gotten super popular is Carapia. That we have actually seen planted with grass, and then they just mow it. And it's very tough. It is actually one of the alternatives to grass. If you're taking out your grass and you want to put in something that is low to very low water using, Carapia is definitely a possibility. And then depending on the kind of ground cover you have, you can always put pavers in between it. So wherever you want to step, they could step on this material, but if that's not quite right for you, put pavers in there. And these, you don't need to do all that fancy compacting. I mean, that you just clear a space for them. That is a little bit lower than grade. Now, one of the things we said in the very, very beginning is that even lawn can be impermeable because the soil beneath it is so compacted. And that is caused by years of stepping on it, irrigation, when the house was originally constructed. So yeah, so even our gardens can be quite impermeable, and we want to change that. So we want to add oxygen so that we can stimulate the biology in there. We do that with something called core aerating, excuse me, where you basically create these little plugs. You pull out these plugs, put in some compost, and that compost feeds the biology that lives in the soil. And as the biology gets more active, it starts to change the structure of the soil and actually creates more, provides more nutrients so that the grass you have is more resilient, uses less water, and is just tougher all around. All right. Reminder, we only have 20 minutes left, so ask your questions. So I think Amber's getting a lot of questions. This is good. Keep her busy. Let's look at driveways. So all too often when we think of a driveway, it is just a great big concrete pad. Water hits it, runs right off. But there are definitely options that are available to you. The first one is this interlocking pavers. So same thing as with the concrete pavers, not as many options, but there are different colors, there are different patterns that are available to you. And these are probably something that are going to be installed by a professional. Now, for a path, you might be able to do it for yourself. For a driveway, probably a good idea to bring in someone who knows how to do these well. They have built-in gaps, so you don't have to worry about sitting there with like little dividers to make sure that those gaps stay in there. They've actually been designed so that those gaps are built in when they go down. The other thing you might want to consider is grasscrete. So again, you've got this hard surface that your tires can run over, but grass or another plant material is actually, and I'll show you an image of that, actually sits a little bit lower so that the roots are protected and you can drive over it. You see this sometimes in parks where they've got an area that can be both grass slash areas for like fire trucks in case of emergencies, or an adjunct parking area. So this is what they would look like from the profile. As always, you're going to have that native soil, you have that sub base, and then you've got those little concrete shapes there. And then you can see how the roots are actually a little bit lower than the surface so that they don't get smushed when cars run over it. That's a very technical term, smushed. And there actually is pervious concrete where you can put water on it, and it has been designed so that the water will run through it. One of the things to think about with permeability is that eventually with those gaps, there is a buildup of sediment. And so every so often you will need to have that maintained, bring out a professional company in order to vacuum up all the dust and the dirt that has eventually compacted so that now the water isn't able to get through anymore. So just something to think about. Now, as far as concrete, you can certainly take an existing concrete. The image on the left, that was an existing concrete that had cracks in it. And so the designer got very creative, made the cracks bigger, filled them, and then actually stained the concrete so that it looked like it was designed. And then the image on the right, that is poured in place concrete. So they decided what that pattern was going to look like. They put down their forms, and then they went ahead and poured the concrete accordingly. You can get very creative with that. And then the last piece of the puzzle, the honeycomb, is that the soil is a sponge. It is the biggest opportunity we have for holding on to our rain, our water. Even when we irrigate, we want to be holding on to that water. And if we're not better at doing it, we are losing it, and not just the water, but also the soil that gets washed away with erosion. So one of the things that you can definitely do is a rain garden. Again, we have an entire class where we talk about rain gardens, but these are very simple. You don't need a contractor to do it. Basically, it is a simple recontouring of a flat surface so that you have a little bit of a depression. You can see my hands there, a little bit of a depression, a bowl 4, 5, 6 inches deep, plant it, fill it with mulch, and then when it rains, the opportunity for us to be holding on to that water instead of it running away. We also need plants. So to have soil and then just mulch does not work nearly as well as having plants in the ground as well. Those roots encourage that biology. The biology changes and improves the structure of the soil. And so all of a sudden, something like this has a much greater ability to hold on to water than something that has no plants in it. And we need a sponge, not a brick. Unfortunately, too many of us have bricks, especially if you're taking out your turf. Your soil is very brick-like, and it's not just clay soil. Sandy soils can be very compacted as well. So, yeah. Speaking of compaction, it might be a great idea to actually run a compaction test, which means you're going to be digging a hole, fill it with water a couple of times. And then on the second time, go ahead and measure or time how quickly that water is moving through, is sinking down. You know, if it goes down relatively quickly, maybe your soil is very sandy. You might want to add some compost. If it takes, 3 days to drain, that's a problem, obviously. And so where we want it is just right, where it is draining, but it's not draining too fast or sitting there for too long. But it's a great idea to just know what's happening in your garden. And the thing about rain is we know what it's like. It's like our gardens just come to life after a good rain. And so the more of that we can keep in the garden, the happier everything will be. All right. So next steps, design a garden, apply for a rebate. I'm going to share what some of those are. Look out for the links that are coming your way tomorrow. Attend other workshops and transform your landscape. So our next class, October 9th, which is goodness, just a couple of weeks away, is an edible garden where we talk about being able to grow fruits and vegetables all year round. So that should be lots of fun. And then, as I mentioned, as you saw, we are recording tonight's class. There are other classes that have been recorded that are available for you on demand. They are free to you, and we'll be sending you that link in the email tomorrow. So as far as rebates and resources, they talked about the big mulch giveaway on October 11th. Find out what else is available through this great website, has all kinds of resources on it. There are things like free tree watering rings that are being given away. There's a cash for grass rebate that is available. There's controllers that are available with rebates, cisterns for holding onto rainwater. And yeah, if there's any questions about what you might be able to take, there's an audit. They'll actually come out to your house and tell you what could do with a little bit of help, and let you know what other resources are available to you.
Well, we have a wonderful CalAm customers and customers that are within the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District boundaries. We have a wonderful rebate on smart monitoring devices, such as the Flume device. Okay. So what is a Flume device? A Flume device monitors your usage. And so if you go over a certain amount, let's say what is normal for you, you will get a text that says that something is wrong, you're using too much water. Or if you're spraying a leak, you get a text. And it's really nice. And so the Flume, I have it at my home, And so you wrap it around your meter, and then you download an app to your cell phone and connect it to your Wi-Fi, and you're ready to go. So the cost of the Flume device is $200. Okay. The rebate is $200.
Oh my gosh.
Okay? So it's like almost free, except you're paying shipping and handling. I think it's maybe $18. Okay. So it's like it's free, folks. Well, almost free. Okay. So $200 rebate, the Flume is 200. And the shipping and handling is like 18 bucks. And so that's what the customer pays. And so it's really a great, it's a great thing that we offer for our customers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Super. Well, thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Okay. Very good.
So lots and lots of ways that California American Water can support you with conserving water. And Amber, you were looking, you got a lot of questions back there. I don't know if there's some that are of a more general nature that we just want to share so everybody can get the information.
It's been great after you kind of reminded everybody to ask questions. All the questions started pouring in. I'm trying to keep up. So sorry I didn't get to every single one, actually. I'm still kind of working through some of them. Let's see. So some of the earlier ones. People were asking about some, kind of ground cover issues, about how to handle, slope with some of the materials that you were talking about. And we talked about ground cover is a great solution to a slope versus if you have mulch or DG on a slope, then obviously there's, issues with if there's a strong rain and that slope can, cause some erosion there. Also terracing your property, proper grading is helpful there for a slope. We're talking about, the permeability of decomposed granite, and you've addressed that with the stabilizer, kind of makes it less permeable. But there were a few people asking about using ground cover or cover crops as a way to aerate the soil, which I think is a great idea. And a couple people were wanting to address using cover crops. And cover crops is a great thing to use, especially if you have a kind of a clean slate where and you're going to go slow enough to be able to build up your soil with enough time to be able to grow a cover crop and then turn it down into your soil. Basically, you're creating your own compost by growing a cover crop such as clover. Clover is a nitrogen fixing plant that brings nitrogen from the atmosphere into nodules in the root system and then can disperse it into the soil. So if you grow, the right types of cover crops, vetch, clover, and some other ones as well that have kind of deeper roots roots will permeate down into the soil. If you have that kind of time and you're able to do that kind of intentionality, that's an excellent option to create a very permeable soil sponge like Marian had talked about earlier. And then you would cut down that cover crop, incorporate it into your soil. So yeah, I think I wanted to address that because a couple people really
Oh,
wanted
you can just leave it there, depending what you're planting, you just leave it there the way you would a ground cover.
Right.
So, or just weed whack it. And so there's no need to incorporate it. You can either leave it in place, it'll eventually just dry up and break down, or, add it to a compost pile. But yeah, the less disturbance to the soil, the better. So,
yeah.
But
yep. So yeah, how much time do I have?
Yeah, we've got a few more minutes if there was anything. Again, I think the questions that are less, what's a good tree here, but that are the general nature where, a lot of people could go, oh, haven't thought of that, or that's a great suggestion.
Right. Yeah. So let's see here. Couple questions just about I'm glad that you were able to talk about kind of installing some of these things, how deep to do the road base and the gravel. That's a good thing to think about, because if you just do, a couple inches of gravel on top of native soil, you may not have the same effect as if you go down that 4 inches and have the proper base for the flagstone or the decomposed granite. That's really good. One question I was working on towards the very end was about concrete up against a house. Um, they were asking, and maybe you have a suggestion for this, but permeable concrete up against the house, if that would be a good option versus just regular concrete up against the house. I think they're concerned about maybe the foundation issues. If there was a permeable concrete that close to the house, if it would get down into the foundation. I kind of talked about grading is very
Yeah,
important.
that's
Having
a
the
big
proper
one.
grading. Yeah, because I think it's the same for non-permeable concrete. You know, the proper installation is grading away from the house. If the water is not accumulating down in your foundation. And I think that's going to be the same as if you're interested in doing a permeable concrete option. You still want to have the correct base and they still want to have the correct grading so that the water is going where you want it to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people put gravel, people have soil up against the house and all of that. That's all sitting at your foundation.
Yeah. Yeah,
so-
that's a thought that I had too. If you have that good permeable soil, you know, we have planters against houses. It's pretty common. So yeah.
All right. If there's anything else. All right. So I see, yeah, so people are asking for specific plant suggestions. I'm just wondering if there's, so someone said, what is the October 11 giveaway? I missed the details. So if you, either Veronica or Joe, if you want to repeat what the giveaway is?
Sure. For those that did not, were not at the meeting at the beginning, the giveaway is for free mulch to CalAm customers. And what that entails is October 11th, we will be having a big mulch event. The giveaway is 5 pre-bags, or if you have a truck, you can bring your truck and you can get up to 2 cubic yards. Only requirement is to bring a copy of your bill, and that can be through your phone and an ID. It will be from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. October 11th.
Right. Well, great. So hopefully folks learned a little something about permeability everywhere. And we look forward to seeing you in October for a class on edible gardens. And always a pleasure, Joe, Veronica. Have a great evening.
Thank you, ladies.